Hello everyone and welcome back to Anything.All Project YouTube channel. For today's update, we will be sharing to you another underbust Lolita sewing project. This underbust Lolita project is one of my personal favorite project for this month. Not only because the design of this underbust project is a classic look, but also because the color choices and the materials designs of this project is really my personal liking. The cloth I'm using in this project is this lovely detail brocade cloth that is printed with gold and black details. This whole project is both fulfilling and satisfying for me, and I do hope that you will like this video project. Without any further ado, let us now start the process of making this project. We will be working on the skirt part of the underbust project first. And just like how we usually work on our Lolita skirts and underbust skirts, you will need to cut a 120 inches width panel cloth. The length of this skirt is around 22 inches. The length of my skirt in this project is a lot more shorter compared to my other projects, because we will be layering it with ruffles later on. Once you already have your panel cloth, you will then need to run the top and the bottom part of the whole panel cloth into the overlock machine. This will just give us a more clean edges that will be a lot more easier to work with. When you finally have the top and the bottom part of the panel cut done and run into the overlock machine, it is now time to gather the whole panel skirt. You will need to gather the panel skirt into the measures of your waist. My model's measure is around 27 inches. We will be adding 2 inches allowance in this measurement for the back panel closures later on. You will also need to remember that when you gather the skirt into the measures of your waist, you will need to leave at least 2 inches non-gathered part in your panel cloth. This will be our seam allowance later on when we close the back panels together. When all those steps are done, you can now set the skirt aside and we can now work on the waist bodies of this project. For the waist bodies, you will just need to cut 2 patterns, one for the lining and one for the main cloth. I currently don't have any black cloth material for my lining works, so I will just be using this navy blue cloth to serve as the lining. The panel waist measures will be your waist measure plus 2 inches allowance same. The length of your waist panel will depend on your liking, but for me, I just follow my usual measures for any underbust projects, and that measure is around 5 inches. Sew the 2 panel cloth together, closing all the edges of the 2 panels. After the 2 layers of panels are sewn down, you will need to cut all the excess cloth. Now, get your marking pencil and a ruler. In this step, we will be marking the placement of the laceworks for these ribbon designs. Fold the whole waist bodies into half and then mark the center point of the panel bodies. Once you already identify the center part of your waist bodies, you will then need to measure 2 inches from the center. Once your second marking are finally done, you will need to measure 3 inches again from that second marking, and that will be our final marking design. In total, you will have 5 markings in this process. Now, we will sew this plain lace in those markings that we made earlier. The purpose of these laces is not for decorations, so you don't have to worry even though it is color white or any color of your liking. These laces will serve as the crisscross holes of the satin ribbons that we'll be adding later on. Once the laces are sewn down, we can now start marking where we will poke some holes in the laces. I will be measuring 2 inches from the top first because we will need to fold the top part of the waist bodice later on. The next few markings will be just 1 inch until you reach the bottom part of the waist bodice. After the markings are done, you will then need to poke holes into these markings. The holes just need to be big enough for the satin ribbons to get through. If we poke too much in this process, the satin ribbon will look a bit more excessive, so make sure that you will only poke enough for this process. After you poke and finish all the holes in your markings, you will need to place the satin ribbons in those markings, making the crisscross design. You will need to insert the satin ribbons as early as now, so we will avoid the complicated stuff later on. You won't be able to freely adjust and fix the satin ribbons if we will be sewing the ruffles fixed without the satin ribbons in place. Once the ribbons are finished, we will then now decorate the front waist bodies with this ruffles work. We will also be covering the white laces in this process. You will just need to sew the ruffles work on the white laces part, just enough to cover the laces fully. Then, we will finish off the waist bodies by sewing the bottom and the top part of the panel bodies. This will hold the ruffles work in place so it won't move when we run the whole piece into the overlock machine. Once you finish this step, it's time for us to finish the top part of the waist bodies. You will just need to fold the top part of the panel bodies by 1 inch. This measure can change, but doing a 1 inch fold will also strengthen the hold of the shape of the whole top bodice part. You can try doing a 2 inch fold, but for me it was already too excessive. And again, if you do a 2 inch fold, you will need to adjust the non-ruffle works on the details that is covering the white laces. Once the fold was done, you can then now attach the skirt onto the waist bodies. I will fold the skirt into half and then I will mark the center point of the whole waist bodies. Then we will match the center part of these two pieces and from there on we will sew them flat. I usually start in the middle, going to one of the sides of the skirt. This will lessen the bulkiness of the skirt and it will place the gathers evenly. Once the skirt and the main bodies are attached, we can then now finish the back part of the underbust bodies. You will need to run the back raw edges of the skirt into the overlock machine. Once you finish this step, take the two sides of the back panel together and then sew them down. I'm sewing 1 inch from the edge in this process. I will be marking 12 inches from the top of the main bodies. Then I will rerun the lower part where the 12 inches ends into the sewing machine again, just for a stronger support on the skirt. Once you finish this, you can then now unstitch the 12 inches measure earlier. Now that the panel back are unstitched, you will need to press the unstitched edge on their specific sides. You can flat stitch them down or you can just plainly iron them. That will depend on your choice. Now, it's time for my favorite part, decorating the skirt with tons of ruffles work. This ruffles work is around 4 inches in length. We will just need to sew the ruffles on the edge of the skirt. This will add volume and length to this project. Once you finish attaching the first layer of ruffles, you will need your trusted marking pencil and your rulers again. From there, we will be marking 3 inches from the first layer of ruffles. Once you finish your marking, you will then need to sew another layer of ruffles. This layer of ruffles is as the same as the first layer one. The first 2 layers of ruffles only have one side hemmed, so to hide the raw edges of the second layer of ruffles, we will then sew this 2 inches length double-sided hem ruffles on top of it. You will not need to mark where you will sew these ruffles because these ruffle works will just be sewn directly on top of the second layer of ruffles. Now, it's time to make the corset back closure for this project. I'm marking 3 inches from the edge of the back panel bodies. Then, we will need to make a strip-like string like this to make the loopholes of the back panels. You can either do this strip-like string by sewing a very long line, closing all the edges and then turning it inside out. Once you have the strips, you will then need to cut it into 2.5 inches. Then, continue to sew the strips on the markings we made earlier. This will be the back corset cover closure. Cut a 12 inches length panel cloth with 6 inches width measure. I sew all the sides close and then turn it inside out. After I turn it inside out, I close all the gap and then flat stitch all the sides of the panel. And then I continue to sew it on one side of the panel body sides. This is completely random, but since I still have few cloths for this project, I decided to make tons of ribbons to be added on the skirt. And that completes the project. I seriously enjoy working with this project and I really am satisfied with the result of this skirt. Thank you very much for watching and I hope that you enjoy this video. If you have any comments or suggestions, don't forget to comment down below. And again, if you're still not part of this family, don't forget to click subscribe. For now, happy sewing everyone! Bye bye!